The book, Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life, came after I had studied Chinese medicine and put the two of them together, and what happened. Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Claudia Welch, and I've been asked to share with you my own history with Ayurveda and how I got here and what was difficult and what was easy and what was meaningful, this kind of thing. And I think that there's the physical story of how it all happened, and then there's really the story of how it all happened. And I think that that those two stories change as time goes on. I have a different understanding of how I got here than my understanding was when I was 20 or 30 years old. And so right now my understanding is the following, that when I was 7 or 8 years old, my Guruji wrote me a letter, and in this letter he said, "Keep good company. Good company makes a man great." And I was 8. It meant something to me then, but as years went by, I think I kind of forgot about it. The teenage years hit, and I got into a different world where I forgot those words, I would say. Not completely forgot them, but they went to the back of my head. And then I had a real interest in medicine and a real interest in India. My guru was from India. And so I came to India to visit my Guruji and fell in love with India, and I was interested in medicine, and so the two naturally came together. There was a confluence of interests, and I became interested in Ayurveda, the medicine of India. And so then I was very ambitious, and I'm sitting here in India now as we speak. And so it's always hard to get everything completely quiet in India, but that's just the way it is. So I came to India. I got interested in India. I was interested in medicine, so the two things came together, and I became, I would say, passionate about Ayurveda is the word that people often use, and I think it probably fit at that point. I was very ambitious about Ayurveda. I loved it. And the love was also married to an ambition for the knowledge of Ayurveda. And so I pursued it as much as I could, and I had a very different experience than, say, Dr. Svoboda, who came here and got into India and got into a BAMS course, the Bachelor's of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery, and sailed through it, and I know he had his difficulties, but he got right in. I spent 3 years in India and 1 year trying absolutely as hard as I could to get into a BAMS program, and all it did was make me so sick that I had to go home because I almost died. So it was very, very difficult, and it felt like a failure of sorts. But I kept going. I had studied some Ayurveda on my own, and here in India, and with Dr. Laud in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the studies continued to be very meaningful to me, but I was confused about where I would take it, because, you know, this is the kind of student drawn to Ayurveda anyway. None of us know where we're going with Ayurveda for the most part. In the West, it's difficult because there's no licensing and certification, at least there haven't been by the time this is recording. So I didn't know what I was going to do with it, and then a mentor of mine, Hart Tafo, who's a wonderful Jyotishi, looked at my chart and he said, well, you're going to mix Ayurveda with Chinese medicine. And I was not at all interested in Chinese medicine, zero interest in Chinese medicine. So I said, well, Hart, what about if I study Western medicine and I go to Western medical school, and then I can integrate the two? And he said, well, you know, you could do that, but the difference in the paradigm might drive you a little crazy. And so, you know, and anyway, this says you're going to be mixing it with Chinese, Ayurveda with Chinese medicine. And I said, well, what about if I just study Ayurveda and forget about the credentials and I'll just focus on Ayurveda? And he said, well, look, you're fighting me about this, but this isn't my opinion. This is what I'm seeing in the chart, is that this is what you'll do. So I did it in a situation was kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg. His suggestion made me do it, and then that fulfilled his prophecy in a sense. But in any case, I did it. And I wasn't that interested, but about 6 months into the program, it was a 4-year program, about 6 months into this Chinese medicine program, I thought, this is really something. This is really valuable. And it is, because one of the biggest, there's many things that I got from Chinese medicine, but in Chinese medicine, the focus on qi is wonderful. We focus on prana in Ayurveda to a great degree, but in Chinese medicine, the focus on qi is even more in some ways, and so that was really wonderful. Prana and qi are synonymous. And I got through and the other good thing about that was it allowed me to open a clinical practice that I could get licensed and certified in, and I had a clinical practice and it was busy, and for about 10 years I did that, and that was really wonderful. And when I look back now, the pursuit of Ayurveda from when I was a teenager, it brought me to the feet of good company. Many times in the form of my teachers, Dr. Svoboda and Dr. Lod, and then it brought, and the other students that were around me. There was always a desire for learning more than medicine, more to how to treat people medically, but it's the science of life. So I was very interested in the science of life, perhaps more so over time than the science of, you know, remedies and so forth. I was very enamored about remedies and the knowledge about treatment protocols and so forth for a long time. But the underlying interest is the interest in the science of life and living, and God, interest in being close to God, and being with my various teachers, and my various co-students, and then with the patients who would come to me. They were patients who come to be treated with Ayurveda. They're also interested in something, usually something more of a fix than a pill, something more profoundly transformative. And so what I've seen over the course of my life now is, it is not so much the practice of Ayurveda that I'm passionate about, or the study or the pursuit of the knowledge. At some point, I learned that even that knowledge, as amazing as it is not going to afford me deep happiness. So in maybe not the final analysis, but perhaps the penultimate analysis, the current analysis, if I were to look back on my life and say, how did I get where I am with Ayurveda? It's because of that original statement that my guru gave me: keep good company makes a man great. And I think that Ayurveda has been a vehicle for me in my life for good company, and that is perhaps the most valuable thing, is the association with good company, whether it's teachers or patients or students or colleagues. At every step of the way, there has been really profoundly good company. So I think that's in terms of what was difficult, my own ambition made things very difficult for me, trying to push and get the BAMS and pushing for a long time. I was very tenacious about pushing for this knowledge. So I think my own nature made it difficult. The pursuit of Ayurveda in general does not need to be so difficult. That was my own nature that made it difficult. And what made it profound was the company and the feeling close to the feet of divinity through this process. The book, Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life, came after I'd studied Chinese medicine and put the two of them together. And what happened with that was, you know, the conversation about hormones is a relatively new conversation. In Western medicine, we didn't start talking about hormones until 1902. This is only about 110 years old, this conversation about hormones. And hormones are not discussed per se in the classics of either Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine. And when I was in practice, every woman that came in complained about hormone imbalance. Almost every woman, whether it was because her cycle was out of balance, or it was late, or it was early, or it was painful, or she thought she was going through perimenopausal symptoms, hot flashes, insomnia, mood swings, this kind of thing, or she was infertile. There were all of these issues around hormones, and the conversation was around hormones. And even though it had been addressed perfunctorily in a basic way in Chinese medicine school and Ayurvedic training, it was not in a meaningful way to me. I didn't see hormones in a meaningful way where I really got that I get these. So I started to study everything I could about them from a Western medical perspective, so that I could understand them and then translate those ideas into Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So that's what happened. So I studied and studied and studied. And you know, have you seen those paintings where you have some kind of repeated pattern, right? Where like a black and white repeated pattern, and you keep looking at that, and you're supposed to see a fish eventually in this pattern. You can't see it, and you can't see it, and you can't see it. And then all of a sudden you can see it in this picture. That was what it was like with hormones. I studied and studied and studied, and it just looked like this contradictory information, and you know, all you get is like where the hormone's secreted and what it does in the body, but how they interact, I just couldn't see a pattern. And I knew from the study of Ayurveda and Chinese medicine that there has to be a pattern. There has to be an elegance underneath the reality, some way that we can understand reality that's elegant, because this is what the classics give us. They don't give us the names of hormones and talk about the hormones per se, but what they do give us is lenses through which to view different aspects of reality in a more or less elegant way. So I kept looking, kept studying, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, can it be that easy? Is it that easy? And I went back over everything with this idea that seemed to come out of this meditation on hormones, and lo and behold, it held up over and over again. It was very clearly described through the language of duality in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. Yin, Yang, Brahmana, Langana, Santarpana, Apatarpana. These are extremely useful terms to understand hormones, much more elegant than trying to understand them through the doshic perspective. And so I went with this information into my practice and practiced this on patient after patient after patient, and it worked beautifully. And so the book was, it took 10 years to write the book, because the idea became clear after a lot of study. But then how to write the book was difficult, because this principle and how sex hormones and how stress hormones interact relate in one way or another to almost every aspect of women's health. So it was very challenging to not be very repetitive in the book. But anyway, the book took about 10 years. It's still good company. It's still good company. It's either the principles themselves are good company, it still brings me to good company, and it's not like my profession is over here and my spiritual life is over here and my personal life is over here. They're all woven together. Tantra means to weave, right? So they're all woven together, and it's difficult to say what Ayurveda is, because it's difficult to say what it's not. It's not outside of anything that I do. It's woven together with everything that I do. Well, we've just been this past week here at this conference in Vaidyagrama in India, and one of the themes of this conference, for me at least, has been what is the difference between the Asuras and the Devas. They're half siblings. The Asuras are born from one mother and one father, and the Devas are born from the same father and a different mother. They're half siblings, and so one of the things, when I got here, I was kind of interested in what this was about, and you, Eric, brought me this book, and you had this book, and I opened to this book, and it said the difference basically between the two is this idea that the Devas see this aspect of possibility beyond the material realm. And I think that in terms of the future of Ayurveda, we could go either way. We could go in a very materialistic way and say, okay, this is the remedy and this is how you have to do it. Or we can open our hearts to the possibilities, all the possibilities of true transformational healing, and follow Ayurveda in terms of its direction that it sort of naturally goes to address ailments in very simple ways, in very complicated ways, and also in ways that we can't even imagine yet. So I think so far as we are really open to the possibilities of transformation, Ayurveda can spread and be cultivated in a number of ways. In our own understanding of herbs and remedies and how to address diseases, in the ability to accurately perceive the context of a patient's life, and in terms of how that context is affecting their organism, their internal health and well-being. And we can help them shift their own internal health and well-being through helping them understand how to shift the context of their lives. And we can also understand that there's even greater possibilities than we've even imagined till now in terms of the possibilities of Ayurveda. I see the possibility of Ayurveda, for example, being extraordinarily healing within India itself. There's so much pollution right now, and the materialism of the West has infiltrated the East, and it's ruining the planet. And so what is my great hope is that that there's possibilities beyond that which we can even see, not only in terms of personal health and working with patients and working with human beings, but the health of the planet. Oh, well, I mean, I think that absolutely modern science and Ayurveda can work together. I do that in the book. You know, the thing is, it's the science of life. It's not the science of Eastern medicine. Ayurveda is the science of life. That includes Western medicine as well as Eastern medicine. So really, when it comes to how I think of Ayurveda, is I think of it as a system of various lenses through which, again, we can view different aspects of reality, including Western medicine. So in Western medicine, they might have this idea, and we can look at it from an Ayurvedic point of view, understand it from that point of view, and it gives us a sense of more possibilities of where we can take that information. And the other thing is in terms of the future of medicine, the more recent book that I wrote that was published, How the Art of Medicine Makes the Science More Effective, Becoming the Medicine We Practice, is I feel at some point, although these remedies are very important and we need to learn them, I feel also that one of the possibilities of a direction we can go in the future is refining our own selves more so that we ourselves can become medicine in a more conscious way. So the new book is based on the 4 qualities that Charaka says are essential to be an effective physician. Excellence in theoretical knowledge, lots of practice, dexterity, and purity. And these 4 things are highly interesting topics. And the book is written in an organization defined by those 4 qualities. There's 4 parts of the book dedicated to those qualities, and then a little bit more. But I feel that if we spend more time learning to cultivate these qualities, which is to say learning to cultivate our art in the art of medicine, it does make the science more effective, and I would like to see that a little bit more. For people studying Ayurveda, have trust, relax, and study wholeheartedly. Well, you know, this to me sounds like a question of, like, what is my dharma? I think this is not something we get to decide. What is important for us to do in the future is not something we get to decide, because we don't know what the future is going to hold. So what I feel is important to do for myself, and maybe this can be useful for Brazilians or anyone else, is to, if we're drawn to the practice and the study of Ayurveda, to practice it in integrity. So to ourselves be in integrity with our thoughts, with our heart, with our speech, and in order to do this, what we really need to do in order to do this is to practice closing the external sensory apparatus briefly every day at least, and in awakening the internal sensory apparatus, and being able to look inside and understand our own condition and how to keep prana flowing smoothly, be able to listen to the little inner voice of clarity about, yes, this is the right thing to do now, whether it's with Ayurveda or whether it's with something else. Right now there's a moment of action, right now there's a moment of inaction, right now there's a moment of waiting. And if we can be true to these moments of action, inaction, and have the courage to wait and do nothing when that is necessary, then it's up to the divine, then it's up to the Ayurveda to direct how Ayurveda is going to go in Brazil or the US or India or anywhere in the world.
Thanks so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaskar.